Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the August 22nd, 2018 briefing session of the Utah Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining. We'll start with you, Director Baza. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome, Mr. Gill, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board to your monthly meeting in Salt Lake City. I am John Baza. I'm the director for the division, and I'll be covering just a few briefing items this morning. We were concerned that the day was going to be long with formal agenda items, so we kept our briefing intentionally short. So we have no, I guess, extra presentations to give you that are on the agenda. But let me cover a couple of other items. One is that you may note that Dana Dean is not present with us today. She is excused. She's attending I think it's a governor's office legislative trip that is planning to visit Ensenada and talk to the officials there about a potential rail line in Mexico that will allow coal export down to the southern border and then through Mexico to Ensenada, where then it can be shipped overseas. I'm not sure how well those discussions are going, but Dana has a passport and she speaks Spanish fluently, so I thought it would be appropriate for her to attend this trip. And I'm sure she'll be able to come back and provide us with information when she returns. But Dana did want me to bring up to you the second other item I'll talk about, and that's our board field trip that is planned for next month. Our board hearing is scheduled on the 26th of September, which is the normal Wednesday here in this building. But on the 25th, a Tuesday, we'll be traveling to Kennecott and the copper mine. The intent is for Kennecott to show off the results of the work that it received the Environmental Excellence Award from this board. And that will be on the 25th of September. Our plan is to meet here at the building and depart at 7:30 in the morning. I've been advised that you will need hard-toed shoes, long pants, and long-sleeve shirts. If you have a hard hat of your own, you may want to bring it, but the division will bring some spare hard hats and the high-visibility vests to use while we're on the mine site. But we're planning on being there for the morning, eating lunch, and partway into the afternoon, as I understand it.
What's the starting time again?
We'll leave here at 7:30 in the morning, Mr. Chairman. The third thing I'd like to bring up is that we did not have a Uinta Basin Oil and Gas Collaborative Group meeting in July because our facility, the Duchesne Event Center, was being used as a fire command center for the Dollar Ridge fire. And we felt with all the fire activities going on, all of the worries about road closures and the fact that the event center was being used, that we simply would just cancel that meeting. So our next regularly scheduled meeting of that group will be in October. I believe the date is Thursday, October 11th. I don't know yet if we've decided on the final topic that we're going to address, but we'll keep you informed of that. But I did want to let you know that we had to cancel our July meeting. We will go ahead with our October meeting. And then this is going to be very short this morning, but the last thing I wanted to do before we move on our agenda is mention that, and I think I've got this right, Meg Oswald, this is your last official board meeting, correct? So Meg is, she's remaining with the AG's office, but she will not be working in our realm anymore. We probably will see her around, but you may want to wish her good luck on her new journey. And tell us who you're going to be working for, Meg. DWR. DWR. Okay. Anyway, thank you for everything you've done, and we appreciate your work as one of our O'Hara Fellows, and wish you great congratulations and good luck on your next assignment.
Second that. Meg?
Mr. Chairman, this was designed to be very short this morning. I'm happy to answer any questions, or you may want to proceed on with the public part of your agenda.
Questions, board members? Maybe if you know, number one would be any fires that affected, forest fires that affected oil and gas operations, mining operations.
You know, it's interesting. The one that really affected us was that Dollar Ridge fire that was in Duchesne County for the most part. I can't recall the total number of acres burned on that, but it was a very significant fire. When that first started, it was interesting that it was moving in the direction of where oil and gas wells exist. And I think that the closest point, it came about 5 miles away. But one of our field operations people, Dennis Ingram, attended the daily briefings, and Tom Thompson actually put together an interactive map that would show the boundaries of the fire and the locations of oil and gas facilities and abandoned mines that we were aware of, so that people could understand where those facilities were. We were prepared to advise operators if the fire approached or started approaching very close to their facilities, that they should take appropriate action. But it never really threatened them. Like I said, it got to its closest point about 5 miles away, and then the fire turned back towards the west, and it was mostly the western border of that fire that people were concerned about. As far as other fires around the state, I don't think we've had any big threats to either oil, gas, or mining activity. We did decide earlier in the summer that our abandoned mines activities, where we had construction work that was going to involve welding or sparks, that we shut all that down for the summer and figured we'd pick that up in the fall. We are doing other abandoned mine work that didn't involve any hot work, but for that we did shut it down for the summer.
Well, just for what it's worth, I got involved in a forest fire within a few hundred yards of a summer cabin that I own, and it was amazing how I've seen forest fires, but the heat that comes off of those is phenomenal and extraordinary. So, anything coming back from the Oil and Gas Interstate Compact Commission?
No, we haven't had a meeting since April, and that was in Oklahoma City. Our next meeting coming up, I believe, is at the end of September in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. We have a new executive director for the IOGCC. Mike Smith announced his retirement late last year, and we had a search committee go out and seek new applicants for the job. The interviews were done, and at the April meeting, it was announced that the former director for the Oil and Gas Texas Railroad Commission has now accepted the job as IOGCC Executive Director. Her name is Lori Rotenberry, and Lori has just an excellent expertise in history. She was a director of the New Mexico Oil and Gas Division. She was head of the Oklahoma Oil and Gas Division. And then she originally started at the Texas Railroad Commission as an attorney, and then she found her way back as the head of the Texas Railroad Commission. So she's got experience across several state boundaries, and she'll do an excellent job with IOGCC at this point.
Good. Well, let me report on something. If you haven't heard, we think it'll be in September. There will be a presentation by the 5-County Infrastructure Coalition, which is an entity that represents the oil and gas producing counties of eastern Utah. That will be making a presentation to a number of government entities that are getting seed money from the state of Utah or an entity of the state to begin the process of building, or at least feasibility studies for a railroad that would leave from Mighton, Utah, and would go over to someplace in Colorado. Right now, the discussion is Craig, Colorado. They're looking for about $30 million of what they think might be $50 million. The interesting part of it is none of that seed money would be taxpayer money. Would come from the federal mineral revenue system, and there's a lot of support for that. And then if that were to go forward, there is a federal fund for infrastructure that currently has about $8 billion in the bank, of which the state would, or this 5-County Infrastructure Coalition would request somewhere in $1.4, $1.5 billion of federal funds in the form of low-interest loans, grants, or some combination thereof, start moving oil and gas out of the Uinta Basin to the interstate market. The yellow wax crude that's coming out of the basin, it apparently has some, is the premier feedstock for high-end lubricants. And if they can get some of that out to those specialty refineries that could use it, I think they call it Tier 4 lubricants, jet engines, race car engines, things like that. They could start doing that. But anyway, it's moving. Apparently what the division's doing, what this board is doing, is catching the attention of a lot of people, and they're looking at ways to somehow get it into the interstate market. That's just a first step, though. The supply chain of getting it into the market and then finding a refinery that has capacity and all the steps that go along the supply chain are still yet to be done, but that would be a first step. With Vernal being the largest community in America that has no access to railroad, that's going to be part of their argument, but it appears that the pilot projects and the resulting wells that go with that have swamped our refinery capacity in Utah by the factor of 2, 3, 4 times, and so it might be in the state's best self-interest to look into that. And as a result, the State Energy Office, through Dr. Laura Nelson, hosted a conference, one morning conference with some government officials and supply chain people from Mexico, and that's what Dr. Baza was referring to, where Danadine is. And they have a couple of routes that go down. They've got a break in the supply chain where they have to take it off a railroad and put it on a truck and then put it back on a railroad, and they think they can solve that and get it into the get it into a port where it can get on a container ship or some sort of ship that could handle it. And so there's just a lot of attention being given to this. I mention that just because what we've been doing has not been unnoticed. And so I just want to congratulate the division and fellow board members for outside counsel that have brought the issues before us, the companies that have been involved, to see this thing grow and mature into something that looks like it's going to be a very viable process. I don't know if you noticed, but Tesoro, I believe, added $500 million to their refinery just to handle what Newfield was proposing to bring to them. Heard that Chevron is looking at a 1.5 year process to do something on their refinery to increase capacity. So things are happening. With that, we will now turn to the opportunity for public comment. If someone has an issue they would like to discuss with the board that is part of our jurisdiction or you think might be helpful to the board, the time is now. Anyone like to address the board? Seeing none, then, we will be adjourned until 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Pardon me? 9:30. Oh, I beg your pardon. Correction? 9:30. We're adjourned till 9:30. Thank you very much.